welcome to our final Monday at the Mound. Today we're going to be taking a tour of our Natural History Museum. My name is Anna and I actually am the manager of our museum here, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what it's all about. So the first thing that I want to tell y'all about is our lovely photo that we have here of Miss Diane Davies. So she is someone that you may have heard of before if you are part of 4-H or Extension. But for those of you who don't know, Diane Davies actually started the environmental education program within 4-H. So she started that back in the 1970s, and ever since then, we have been hosting different school groups for our environmental education programs. So this museum is actually dedicated to her because without her, we wouldn't have our awesome programs. So let's get started on our tour. So we just walked in through the front door, and the very first thing that you see here is our giant mosasaur. He's part of our pre-history exhibit. So this is the very, very beginning. So in a way, it's like this is the beginning of time. These are all underwater critters that thankfully do not live in the ocean today. They are all extinct, but we have found fossils that show us that they once were part of our ocean ecosystems. We also have all kinds of fossils and replicas of fossils of different animals that once lived before humans roamed the earth. So as we continue along, you walk down the hallway and you enter this mine. So in Georgia, we have places where you can actually walk into caves, or we do have old mines that you can see remnants of. So as you come in, you start to see some of the geologic features of Georgia. So we have different crystals and rocks that you could find that you might dig out of the ground. We also have different exhibits that explain the different layers of our earth and explain how all these layers are made up of different types of rocks. And then we get up to the outer layer where living things are. So as we continue on, we have some examples of some really cool rocks, minerals, things like that that you can find here in Georgia. Some you probably recognize, like granite or limestone, graphite, like our pencils are made out of, and even kaolin, which you can actually eat. And we have a lot of that here in Georgia. So we continue through our mine, and you can see even different features of mines like our stalactites and stalagmites, and then different examples of fossils and different animals and plants that might have been living many, many years ago, beyond our memory. So we make our way out of our cave, and we are now in the more kind of dinosaur era. So you'll see some animals that maybe look kind of familiar, but not quite like the things that we have here today. So this guy is sort of like maybe a very prehistoric version of a reptile. We have giant roaches. So they're definitely the relatives of the animals that you would see walking around, scurrying around today. So as we move along, you can see different examples of dinosaurs and large animals or megafauna that you may have seen here in Georgia, but also might have roamed different parts of the world. And you can get an idea for just how big these guys were and how different they were from each other. So we had all kinds of different types of animals, and they were in sizes that is hard for us to even comprehend. So here in Georgia, we have this exhibit that's really, really neat that shows you different types of animals, and that word that I threw out there earlier, megafauna, which is just big animals that might have been here in Georgia. So they kind of look like animals that we see today because they're very, very distant cousins. So we are going to start to move into our human history time period. We have this really neat exhibit that shows you some native history and is sort of a replica of how native people would have lived that were here, native here to Georgia. So we have, for example, this structure that we call wattle and daub, made out of sticks and that Georgia red clay that is a really good building material. You also have different pelts that would have come from native animals, and then stone and clay tools and utensils, some of which you could probably even still find in different parts of Georgia today. So we will keep moving and we can actually see some really good examples of some of those tools that the native people would have used. We have this really awesome exhibit that shows you all different types of arrowheads. So these were put at the end of spears to aid in hunting, and they were made from different types of rock that you would find here in Georgia. Or maybe that they traded for in order to get different types of rock. So this one's really neat because it goes through different time periods. So the arrowheads used in this time period are probably a little different from the ones in later time periods. So these are also really neat because you can also find these here in Georgia today. So let's move along. Over here, moving a little bit away from the human aspect of Georgia's natural history, we are going to talk a little bit about some of the critters, the native critters that we have here. So on exhibit, we have some musk turtles. We have 2 of those. We have some pond sliders. We have 2 of those as well. We also have a Fowler's toad, but you may not see him because he's hiding behind his water dish right now. So as we move along, we have some other really fascinating critters on display. We have our giant cave cockroaches, Madagascar hissing cockroaches, a rose-haired tarantula, who's also hiding, and an emperor scorpion, who is also hiding. These guys are a little shy, but you may notice that you wouldn't really find any of these animals native in Georgia. They are not roaming around in the woods, but rather they all come from different places. These are all examples of invertebrates, and we do have an exhibit dedicated to some native invertebrates. So I know a few weeks ago you may have tuned in to our Live at the Hive session where we talked about Georgia's honeybees. We have a whole exhibit dedicated to them. People can check out a hive box and see what it looks like inside of a beehive, and it also explains some of the parts of beehives. So as we move along, still talking about some of our native animals, we have Peach here. He's one of our snake friends. He is a corn snake, but he probably looks different from other corn snakes that you've seen, and that is because he is amelanistic. And that's just a fancy word for saying that his skin is has different pigments in it, and it makes him a little less camouflaged than other corn snakes. So he doesn't blend in very well to his surroundings, but he is still super cool and is a wonderful snake to have here at our museum. We also have an eastern box turtle who is actually taking a soak in his water dish right now. His name is Armani, and he's just rehydrating. So if you look up just a little bit, we do have a yellow rat snake on exhibit, but she, I'm pretty sure, is hiding under that rock. So our animals are a little shy in the museum, but if you come visit, you may get a chance to see them in person. So over here at the museum, or this part of the museum, we have a whole section dedicated to forestry. So forestry is a very important industry here in Georgia, and this whole section outlines all of its importance. So we start with the basics of a tree, the biology of a tree. We have this really awesome, huge tree cookie to help us date the tree, which is us figuring out how old a tree is by counting the rings within its wood. And then we have this really neat exhibit that outlines what a forest in Georgia would have looked like at different parts of history. So depending on how humans use or don't use the forest, it can look differently. So speaking of humans using the forest, we have an entire exhibit here dedicated to different products that you can find, or excuse me, that have forest products in them. So, for example, we have crayons, ice cream, we have toothpaste, and several others. All of these products require forest materials in order to be made. So as humans, we rely on the forest in so many ways. If you look to the left, you'll see examples of animals that you could find in Georgia forest. So just the same as we rely on forests for products that we use every day and for recreation, these animals rely on the forest for their home, and this is where they hunt, they sleep, and they raise their young. One of my favorite parts of this exhibit is this huge panoramic mural that shows all of the regions of Georgia, ranging from the North Georgia mountains down to Atlanta, through the Piedmont, and then all the way down to the coastal plains. And this really does a good job of illustrating all the different ways that we can use the forest and how humans and animals interact with it. So we are going to keep on moving, and we're about to enter probably the largest exhibit in the museum. We're entering our agriculture exhibit. So we all know that agriculture is such an important part of Georgia's industry, and so we have this whole section devoted to it. So real quick, I want to challenge you guys, and this can, if you are able to answer this question correctly, you can earn an exclusive Rock Eagle prize. So the first 3 people to comment with the correct answer will earn a prize. So who can tell me what is the #1 agricultural commodity in the state of Georgia? So I'll let y'all think about that. Leave your comment if you think you know the answer. So here we start out with early agriculture in Georgia. So you can see this mural. It is definitely an earlier depiction of what it was like to run a farm here. There are lots of horses, all of the work is being done by hand, and they have a little bit of a different landscape than we do today. So as we move through, you can see some of the older tools that would have been used on a farm. You can see that we have cotton, which is a huge crop that was very important to Georgia's agricultural industry. And then we are going to continue to move along into more modern day agriculture. So in Georgia, we produce all kinds of things, and you can see that farms look a little different today. They're pretty diverse, and they produce different types of food, different animals, and they have all kinds of machinery that helps make a farm successful. So a good example of that is our tractor, which we have here. This is a guest favorite for sure, because guests love to sit in the tractor and imagine that they're rolling through a field. Another really fun mural that we have is depicting agricultural animals in Georgia. And if you are a 4-H'er, you might recognize some of these activities. So things like keeping sheep and lambs, livestock judging, and just general taking care of agricultural animals. So as we move along, kind of making our way out of our agricultural exhibit, we move into the final hallway, and this is really neat because it outlines the history of Rock Eagle, starting all the way back in prehistory, and it focuses on the Rock Eagle Mound, and then it moves over to the settlers who lived here, and then it slowly becoming a 4-H center that's owned by the University of Georgia, the 4-H center and how it has changed throughout the years. So it's really cool because you can see old pictures of 4-H'ers, and then it moves into the kind of modern day 4-H camp experience, and then the environmental education program, and then what Rock Eagle how it has transformed over the past few years, and then also thinking about the future of Rock Eagle and 4-H and the education department and the camp experience here at Rock Eagle. So this is the end of the museum. We only looked at a few of the exhibits that we have here. So if you would like to come check out the museum, then let us know, because we are able to book school groups to come and visit. If you come for Sunday lunch, there are some days that we are open. We have the museum open free of charge after Sunday lunch. So there are definitely opportunities for you to come and visit. So we hope to see you here at the museum at some point in the future. And we hope that you have enjoyed Mondays at the Mound here at Rock Eagle. And we hope that you tune in tomorrow for Tuesdays on Tybee.